Well, welcome everybody. My name is Mark O'Brien. I'm the chair of the aviation program, and I'd like to welcome everybody here. I'd like to thank our panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to be on our aviation panel. This event is being recorded. It'll be made available to ASU 101 instructors in a few days. In case you become closed out of the meeting, please try logging in again. We have panelists from 4:30 to 6 p.m. followed by a 3-minute break. And then the aviation student organizations will present from 6 to 6:30. If you're an ASU 101 student, your attendance is being recorded based on your registration information and the length of the meeting. The attendance list will be given to your ASU 101 instructor. All students, please use the Q&A box on the black Zoom bar to type career-related questions for our panelists. If the question is directed to specific panelists, please include their names in your question. Feel free to type in your questions now. Our Q&A moderator will read your questions shortly. And as a moderator, I'll start with prepared questions directed to some or all of the panelists. And panelists, I will use your name so you know the question is directed toward you. If you would like to pass on answering a question, please feel free to say pass, add on, or agree with someone else's statement. And if you'd like to buy a vowel, you may. Panelists, please take yourself off of mute, but remain off video. And let's begin. So the first question is for all panelists. To help student audience know a bit about you as they formulate their questions, please give a 2-minute quick bio, including your current and more recent previous roles. And so let's start. I'm gonna I can see the pictures of our panelists. So I'd like to start with Jesse. Jesse Ahern is the president of Pacific Coast Jet. Hi, Jesse. Glad to have you with us. Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. I'm Jesse Ahern. I graduated from ASU in December of 1999. I was just doing the math. That's just over 20 years ago, which is really hard to believe. Doesn't seem like that long ago. I studied actually meteorology at Arizona State. I was an Air Force ROTC scholarship recipient with the idea of going into the Air Force and being a pilot. During my time at ASU, I didn't do the professional flight program, but I did fly as a part-time job. I worked my way up to be a flight instructor, and I used to do that out at Mesa Falcon Field. After I graduated from ASU, I went into the Air Force, and I flew 2 different types of planes in the Air Force after primary training. I flew the DC-9, which has since been retired, did some aeromedical evacuation on that plane. And then I flew the C-5, which is a big 4-engine cargo airplane. I was in the Air Force for active duty for about 6 years, at which point in time the Air Force decided they had too many pilots. And so I was able to get out a little bit earlier than planned, and I transitioned into the Air Force Reserves. I was hoping to be an airline pilot. They weren't hiring at the time due to the economy. And I ended up finding a job in corporate aviation, which is really how I ended up starting my business. I saw an opportunity to mix aviation with an entrepreneurial spirit that I'd always had. And I came up with an idea of starting my own management and charter company, which I did. That was about 15 years ago. About a year after I started that, the airline that I always wanted to work for had decided to hire again. So I did take a job there, which I continued to do for the last 12 years or so, in addition to running my company, and that's Southwest Airlines. So I've flown in corporate, private operations, military, and Part 121 airlines.
That's great. Great. Thanks for being here, Jesse.
Great to be here.
And next person I'd like to introduce you to is Aaron Grissom. He was a graduate of our program early, some mid-2000, like 2010, Aaron, maybe? You give us your story.
Yes. Hey, hello all. Aaron Grissom here. I graduated pro flight at Arizona State in 2000. It says on my 2012, spring of 2012. After completing at Arizona State, I started flight instructing out of Falcon Field at a small Part 61 flight school. Transitioned to CAE, Oxford Aviation Academy in 2013, and then 2014 transitioned to Mesa Airlines, where I was a first officer on the CRJ out of Washington, Dulles, Phoenix, and Dallas. And then late summer, early fall of 2015, was awarded upgrade captain on the Embraer 175. And then 2016, I transitioned into the recruiting department, where I held roles as a pilot recruiter, also a pilot mentor. Then I began to manage the pilot mentor program. And then I was a pilot recruiter manager. And then by the time I left Mesa, I was the manager of recruiting. And transitioned from Mesa Airlines earlier this year to United. Timing's everything, right? February of this year, transitioned to United, where I was training on the 757. And then, as all you know, COVID happened, and now I'm displaced to the Airbus, where I'll be returning to training later this week. So thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here, and I'm ready to answer some questions whenever it's called.
Well, we're glad to have you as well, Aaron. And by the way, Aaron is a fellow musician. I remember we used to talk about bass guitar when he was here. So let's see, Destry. Destry Jacobs is one of our favorite graduates, because she's been so involved with so many things in our program over the years. Destry, tell us a little about what you've been doing.
So can everyone hear me now?
Yep.
Perfect. Wonderful. So I'm one of the more recent grads from the ASU program. I graduated with my bachelor's in air management in 2018 and graduated with my master's in human factors in 2019. So it has been just a little bit around almost 2 years now. I know it's only last year, but early graduation times play into that. But so I started at ASU, of course, obviously part of the program there, was super involved with aviation and also recruiting for Arizona State. But after graduation, I was chosen to be the chair of the new Women in Aviation Young Professionals Council. Currently, I am a sitting member on that council. I also worked for National Business Aviation Association in Washington, D.C. And then now I am currently at Phoenix Sky Harbor doing some fun stuff there and learning about the not only the corporate side, but also a lot of the airport side, how the airport is handling pretty much everything from literally times where we're opening a brand new terminal to how we're handling the COVID-19 pandemic. So I've seen a good chunk in my very short career. But yeah, it's a very exciting time to be in the industry is maybe a short way to put it. But yeah, ASU's not too far in my room mirror, so I have the ability to speak to both sides of the coin.
That's great, Destry. Thanks for being here. And our next panelist is Professor John Delute. He's our faculty lead in the air traffic management program and was a controller for, I believe, LA Center, right, John?
Yeah, good old LA Center.
Yeah.
So
yeah, your story.
Oh, my story. Well, very short. Also a graduate of Arizona State way back in '89 in political science. Visions of law school were dancing on my head, and that didn't really work out. Well, I didn't even try because I took this test that the government was having, all the time. Now it's kind of sparse. Scored well enough. I got a phone call. I took the test December of '89. I got a phone call February of '90. By May of '90, I was at the academy in Oklahoma City. Passed that, and they said, well, if you would like to continue employing with the FAA, we're going to send you to Los Angeles Center. So I got to LA Center in August of '90, and I stayed there till September of 2015. And at that point, had enough of California and kind of headed back here to Chandler. And about a year later, in 2016, the opportunity came up upon me to start here at Arizona State. And I do the en route portion here of the air traffic management, en route operations, the en route lab, where we have people do the pretend to be a controller. Also have a non-radar course available. And so far, so good.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us. Our next panelist is Captain Ed Faith. He's I wanted to ask Captain Faith to be on our panel because not only of his wealth of knowledge and experience in his career, but also he's one of our newest faculty associates. And I really believe highly in having faculty associates be part of our program because they're a great link to the industry, and they have perspectives that a lot of longtime faculty might not have. So I'm pleased to introduce you to Captain Ed Faith, retired UPS chief pilot and Alaska Airlines pilot. Ed, thanks for being here. Tell us a little about yourself.
Thanks, Mark. I'm very happy to be here, and I do appreciate the invite to be a part of this panel and the new students that are incoming. So, yeah, a little bit about my career. 38 years of commercial flying experience. So I guess that probably makes me one of the old guys in the room. It is all civilian. I know there's probably going to be some questions. So I've actually worn 12 different airline uniforms, and we'll talk about bankruptcies and furloughs here shortly, but I've flown corporate, charter, passengers, cargo, a number of different cargo, number of different passengers, being some of the larger ones would be American Airlines. I was in a management role back in the mid 80s when Executive Jet spooled up to start the NetJet program. I was their chief pilot and assistant director of ops. Left to go to American Airlines in 92, was 727 flight engineer and first officer, was furloughed in 94, went to Omni Air and started up with Omni Air, their first class. And then fall of 94, I went to UPS and was hired on as a management pilot at UPS, held a number of positions on the 727, 747, 100, 200, fleet manager on the A300, flew the 7576, and then ended my career after 25 years and retired with UPS as their West Region chief pilot, flying the 747-400 and also overseeing their Asia, Middle East operations. When I retired a year ago this past July, I got picked up at Alaska Airlines in August as A320 first officer, now flying for them out of Los Angeles, and then came over and started visiting some of the classes at Arizona State, working with some of the instructors, and was fortunate enough this fall to get picked up to actually teach one of the classes there. So I was very excited about that. I do have a Bachelor of Science in Aviation Management from Oklahoma State University back in the early 80s. I was also a member of their national championship flight team 3 of the 4 years that we were there. And then more recently, I finished up with a master, an MBA in international business about 10 years ago while I was working primarily over in China. So I've got a lot of experience over in Asia. If there's any questions about that, working with government, working public affairs with the State Department, the Department of Transportation. And I also, I guest lecture at a university called CAMIC, which is a Civil Aviation Management Institute in Beijing. I still teach a number of classes over there to aviation management folks and also governmental agency representatives as we talk about the relationship between the U.S. and China. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Great, thanks. We're so glad to have you with us, Ed. And our final panelist, and I didn't know that Captain Wade was also Sparky. Now that secret's out, right? Anyway, Captain Don Wade is Director of Safety and a captain for Pinnacle Aviation in Scottsdale. He's been a long-time aviation program industry advisory board member, and we appreciate Don very much in our program. As a matter of fact, recently he spoke in my flight instructor class about safety management systems. So Don, a little bit of history of you.
Well, Mark, thanks for inviting me. It's quite a panel that you've got there. It's, other than Ed, I'm probably the only one that didn't graduate from ASU. I began my flying career in 1963. Was a flight instructor beginning in 1964 and have flown professionally ever since, all in the general aviation world, meaning corporate aviation, charter, aircraft management, those kinds of companies. Flew in the Midwest for a bunch of years, out of New York City for a number of years. Was very fortunate, flew the Caribbean for 17 years. And then out here in Arizona, I've been on the Scottsdale Airport for 20 years now. I've always had a background in training. I've had a continuous flight instructor license since 1964. Worked in training centers, my only exposure to airlines was I did some training consultation for an airline back east a number of years ago. And today I'm still active on the Lear 45 and safety officer for a company operating, I think we have 24 or 25 different airplanes now, 13 different types, and about 60 pilots off the Scottsdale Airport. So that's been a good career. And I did actually get my bachelor's degree from a little college in Iowa in 1970 from Simpson College. So I'm glad to be here, and I hope I can add something that helps somebody.
Well, that's great, Don. Thanks. I'm sure you will. So next question again is just for all the panelists, because we're starting to accumulate some questions coming from our students, but this is another general question for the panelists. And again, we'll start left to right. Please tell us one piece of career advice or a career observation that you'd like to ensure that our students, including students who just started their ASU education a few weeks ago, will hear. So let's start with career advice from Jesse.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think my biggest piece of advice is, you've all picked a field that I'm guessing most of you have considerable interest in. Aviation seems to be something that draws people to it for a number of different reasons. I know I certainly was drawn to aviation. My advice would be to have an open mind. I think the industry, I'm very proud to be a part of the industry. I think had I tried to write exactly where I would sit in the industry when I was 17 or 18 years old, I certainly wouldn't have got it correct. It's a big industry. There's a lot of opportunity. Sometimes you think there's that one thing in the field that you want to do. And I think I'm proof through some of the different undertakings that I've had through the years that there are a lot of different areas in aviation where you can take your career and find success. And I didn't necessarily think that I was going to start, a private aviation business that's got 20 planes and 65 employees. That wasn't my intent. But I think just being in the industry and being open-minded and making good connections and just being open to that change or maybe some different opportunities within the field was key for my success. And so I would just encourage open-mindedness.
Great, thanks. Aaron, what do you think? Career advice?
I'd like to echo what Jesse just said, being open-minded and adaptable. And most of everyone on this panel, as you can see, have held different roles and different positions within the field of aviation. So being able to be adaptable and open-minded. There's ups and downs, there's highs and troughs. And so just staying consistent and kind of going with the flow, knowing if it's a low time that eventually it's gonna turn around. So that's mine.
Good piece of information there. Destry, your career advice.
Yeah, Jesse and Aaron kind of hit it on the head. So, but I would also say, be flexible, but keep learning. So I know we talked about the highs and the lows, or how Aaron said it, the troughs and the high points. But if you always keep learning, aviation is one of those industries that whatever you learn in one area is going to help you in another. I can't tell you how many times I was learning something in class, and then I got it brought up with a pilot, or I was talking to someone at work and I get on a phone call that afternoon and I'm able to plug information in that they just didn't know. So I would say keep learning. It keeps you from one, feeling like you're stagnant in your position, keeps things interesting, but two, gives you that edge to if something is going to change or if the industry is going to flip on its head. You have more than one thing to capitalize on. So I would definitely say keep learning, but also meet people, go talk to people. Having that diversity and having that ability to adapt in seeing where the industry is going to take you is part of that, is meeting people who are doing different things. And part of one of the reasons I love the aviation industry is because it is constantly changing, especially with a lot of the technology that we have today. I mean, we have things like Uber Elevate coming around the corner, and different types of UAVs and things like that I was just watching something today that the US Coast Guard uses UAVs to check out ice patterns and how they can get their ships through them safely. So a lot of this is going to be introduced into the industry. So if you start meeting people and learning about the industry, it's going to help you further on. And you might find something that you never would have thought you would have been in, but now it's something that's exciting to you and it's helping you further along in your career.
Great, thank you. John, what's your perspective?
Yeah, with air traffic control, you shouldn't be afraid to expand your horizons. A lot of times, the first facility you get sent to might not be the ultimate facility you want to spend a lot of time at, and sometimes it is. In my career, I spent all 25 years at LA Center in the same area. And I really, looking back on it now, I probably should have spent maybe a year or two in traffic management, or maybe tried an office job for a while, quality assurance or plans and programs. But I was very comfortable working traffic, and I saw it both ways, where some people weren't comfortable working traffic and they wanted to get out of that. So even though you're comfortable in your position, don't be scared to kind of further your horizons. It does take a long time to get finally certified, and once you're finally certified, you want to stay, where it's comfortable. But I think for career progression, if you want to go into management or maybe move up to the headquarters area, you have to do those different types of things.
Great, thank you. Ed?
Yes, thanks, Mark. I do think these are all very good points that the panelists have brought up so far, as from a new student, maybe from a student with mid-career, whatever the case is. My big thing that I would throw out there is network. Networking has to be probably one of the number one things that will help you survive in this industry. It's very it fluctuates. We've heard the panelists talk about opportunities that you may not have thought of, and getting out there and networking with different people. You may identify an opportunity that you never even thought of. You may have had your career path laid out exactly what you want, and you may bump into somebody, talk to somebody who sparks that interest and totally changes the path for the rest of your career. So, like I said, if you look at me, I started out doing charter. I went to corporate, went back to charter. I did cargo, went to passenger, back to cargo, back to passenger, and so people don't realize how important and how small this huge industry that we work in really is. And if you've got to build that network, and even for our new students that are freshmen, get on LinkedIn. I mean, you may think you have nothing to offer, but start building a profile and reach out to people and realize that networking is two-way. It's not you going out there and begging somebody for a job or begging to meet somebody. That's not networking. Networking is having that clear interchange where you've got something to give, they've got something to give, and really get your name out. The wider you throw that net, the more opportunities you have to get that opportunity when things turn around in this industry or a new opportunity comes up. So I think networking is huge.
Great, thank you, Ed. Dawn?
I have to say ditto. The open-minded.
That's what happened with your last one. Right side, yeah.
I'll just throw one more line item in it. Two things. One, I was talking to somebody, and in my short 57-year career, which I never thought would be that long, but it has been, and I definitely don't want it to stop for the foreseeable future. Never find yourself saying, I want to fly an airplane, that's all I want to do. You put yourself in a box and you end up shortchanged, and there's just too much out there to do. Networking, meet people, shake hands, go to functions, expose yourself to different things. I guess the last ditto again, and the last line is, in my career, I never got a job from a resume. It's been hand-to-hand combat the whole time.
Okay, great. Well, I was kind of jotting stuff down there, you know, as far as kind of summarizing what you all were kind of saying. And it seems like connections and networking are a big thing, not just in this industry, in any part of life, but connections and networking, keeping an open mind, being flexible. And I think that's important in aviation, obviously, with, you know, how things change and demographics change and all companies change, right? Continued learning, you know, not just keeping yourself focused on one area and just, you know, becoming an expert on that, but being not afraid to open up to other opportunities, find your interest, and then don't limit yourself. So those are all great pieces of advice. So the next question I have before we start with the student questions, and while we're doing that, please students continue to write your questions and formulate them. And I'll start right to left. This way Don gets a fresh perspective here first. For panelists who've been through cyclical nature of aviation, you know, the ups and downs over the years, would you address concerns that students might have about the aviation industry and their chosen careers? So what about what have you experienced over the cyclical aspect of aviation, Don?
It will happen. What we're experiencing now will happen again. We will recover from this. It'll be back up for a good while and then back down again. Anything that you can do, again, this just kind of dovetails in with open-minded and keep learning and meeting people, right. Finding different places. Just listen to Ed's background and Jesse's background and the different things that have occurred in their careers. In my career in the 70s, 80s, 90s, private aviation, corporate aviation jobs lasted about 5 years. So that it's a never quit game. Everything everybody just said still sits on top of it. Expect the downturns, broaden your base so that you can manage through it.
Great.
That's
great. Thanks. Hey, Ed, I think you'd probably be the great person to answer this question because of your experiences with different airlines, and you mentioned about American Airlines and furloughs. What was the cycle that you kind of saw when you started, and you know, how did that work out?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, it's been interesting. You know, it seems like everybody takes a different path, and some of them are very straight and narrow, and some of us have lots of off ramps and on ramps. So yes, so I've worked for 12 different aviation companies. I've got 3 bankruptcies. I've got a furlough. And right now I'm on a short-term leave with Alaska. So yeah, it's not always you know, that clean career, but part of that's what makes it exciting. You know, when something happens with the particular portion of your career that gives you that opportunity to maybe try something else, maybe go a different direction. And I fall back on that's why that network is so important. It's like Don said, he's never gotten a job from a resume. Now, yes, you have to have that resume because people are going to kind of look at your background and see that you're qualified. But I'm in the same boat. I was able to go from one job to another with pretty much recommendations, you know. And so when you walk in the door, people already have an idea of who they're ready to hire, or if they want to hire you. But yes, I was working on my instrument commercial rating back during the PATCO strike, when all the air traffic controllers were put out. And at that time, the airline industry was going, oh my God, what are we going to do? And everything was in a turmoil. So, but you come out of that. And then in the early 90s, I got furloughed from American Airlines. And, once again, you think, now what am I going to do? Well, I ended up at UPS and ended up with a 25 year career there. During that time, we saw 9/11, which caused a big upheaval in the airlines. Now we have this this virus situation that's got a big upheaval. But the big thing is you got to keep your mind on that final goal and realize that this is not a bad time in aviation for the folks starting. So this is a perfect time for those individuals to get their feet on the ground, get their training done, build up those qualifications, and realize that if you're really in this industry for the right reason, which is because you love it, when you have downturns like this, it chases a lot of people out of the industry that are not here for the right reason. And so, as long as you know what you want and you go after that goal, it may be the perfect time to be in the industry, because now when it swings back up on the upside, you're ready to ride that wave to wherever you want it to go.
Great, thanks, Ed. Hey, John, does ATC kind of suffer from periodic times where hiring is slow, or hiring, how does that all work in terms of the cyclical aviation? I know in the 1980s with the controller strike, that was a big deal, but
Yeah.
how has it been?
Well, and that was illegal. So yeah, they kind of got fired for that. Overall, it's a government job. It's the FAA. It is a federal position. It is very steady. Every 2 weeks, you're going to get your paycheck. Now, there are times when we've all seen the government shutdowns, furloughs. For an air traffic controller, that really, it doesn't matter. You still have to go to work. And in all those years, there are a few shutdowns. Yeah, I went to work and I didn't get paid maybe that pay period, but it was always made up to you. So in that sense, there's a lot of, it is a very steady job. There's a lot of, it's very stable in that regard. Again, you will see the cyclical, after 9/11, big downturn in traffic. Right now with COVID, even worse, because it's even longer than that. You will see traffic numbers rise and fall, but overall very steady, stable employment. And as far as hiring goes, they are still looking for people 800 to 1,000 for the next 10 years. That's what the controller workforce plan is calling for. So even though the academy right now is going half capacity due to COVID, they are still looking for people, and they are still continuing the training as we speak.
Great. Hey, Destry, how in your area there, has there been some, a bit of a downturn with the COVID as far as hiring, in Phoenix? Destry, you might, are you unmuted, Destry? Tell you what, we'll get back to you, Destry. Yeah, we can hear you. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, for some reason it keeps kicking me out and then sending me back in. But I think for me, I've gotten a very quick crash course on this, just because when I graduated, jobs were aplenty. So you could pretty much go anywhere, do anything. You could have something for just a short period of time and then move on to the next thing if it suited you. So I think it's easy to have good times, but that's when you should be planning for the harder times. And I think that's the key thing, is the fact that, one, this question is being asked, and two, that we learn about it in our classes, but also three, the biggest pop word that I have in that question is cyclical. It's going to happen again. We've seen it time and time again. And like Ed, Dawn, and everyone else said, is that it's just going to happen. So I think being prepared is the biggest thing. I know Dawn touched on the networking. Go talk to people, go shake hands, go see who people are, because even if they're not going to hire you now, they might hire you later. I would also say plan financially. If you know it's coming, let's start saving. So go talk to your financial manager. Go see if you can start that Roth IRA as soon as you get out of school. I know these are like things that you're not really thinking of when you're in school, but having at least those thoughts and those seeds are going to save you a little bit later on. I mean, I have friends right now who have either been furloughed from the airlines or have taken extended leaves of absence. And it's those who have planned for this, who have that money put away, that are not freaking out as much as the other ones. So definitely plan ahead. If we know it's going to happen, it's not going to be a surprise. It's just going to be a surprise as to when. Also, kind of like be diverse. You have more to offer than you think you do. Just because you have a degree in ATC or in air transportation management or in professional flight, you have skills that you just don't know yet, or you maybe have glossed over because they already add to another job. So maybe even just being like, oh, let me have that certification in my back pocket, or I can do this, but I haven't really thought about that in a while. So there's a lot of things that you have to offer that you just don't know yet. And then I think the last thing I have is just hope. It's going to be okay. And like they all said, we have those ups, we have those downs. Plan ahead, but know that it's going to be okay and that aviation isn't going anywhere. You might have to change your plans, you might have to change your timeline. And I think that kind of plays into what like Jesse and Aaron said about adaptability, is just being able to see where something's coming, go have those connections for when things hit the fan, but also have that financial plan to take care of yourself and or your family at that time. So definitely start planning those things. And if you're not in a position to start stocking things away, I get it. Don't make a ton of money out of school. But if you start thinking about those things now, when those opportunities do come up, you'll be a little bit more sound either in your career and financially. So definitely something to think about.
Great, thanks, Destry. Hey, Aaron, is this like the first downturn you've seen in your career, or it seems like every 10 years is a little bit of a downturn, but has this been really the first major kind of downturn you've seen in the industry?
Yes, because 2008, I was still in school.
Right.
So, and yeah, so like it, just echoing what I believe Ed said, it's, timing's everything. And then also for those folks that are just starting out now, this is the perfect time to be starting out. This is kind of the first one, my first one going around. And no one could, forecast it being on a level of, COVID. This is, something that we haven't seen before, but yeah, so like everyone echoed, just weather the storm, diversify, have, there's a lot of skills and assets that you can bring to and other aspects of aviation, and then also in other fields as well, with what you learn in aviation, and then also going through high esteemed program as Arizona State.
Thanks. And Jesse, does charter air companies also, get affected by these downturns?
Anytime the economy, really, we have to keep in mind too, this isn't limited to aviation at the moment. Clearly there's some technologies and stuff that are doing really well for the work at home climate that's around, but this is just a bad economic time. It's being affected. It's affecting a lot of industries other than just aviation. We've been very fortunate in private aviation. We've had quite an increase in business, which was somewhat surprising. When COVID hit, we were severely impacted for a couple months because just nobody was traveling in general. And when private aviation started rebounding, it did so significantly more than commercial aviation did. And I was wondering, what was the disposition of the business traveler going to be? I figured business travel was dead for quite some time. And surprisingly, at least at our company where we are on the West Coast, we've seen a rebound in personal travel and new entrants into the private aviation market. People who weren't flying private before perhaps had the money, but maybe couldn't justify it. But now with the safety concerns that COVID brought, we've actually seen quite an increase to where our numbers year over year for the last couple months are increased significantly. I think we're up 15 to 20% year over year for the last 2 months. So it's actually been quite good for private aviation. People being able to fly in a plane with those that they choose to fly with some of the sanitation protocols that we have in place. It's made people feel a lot more safe and felt get comfortable getting back on a plane when they were at least with people they wanted to travel with. So it's actually been quite good, at least from our company's perspective. So that is a bright spot. We can't control timing. I wish we could, but we can control our preparation. So I learned this at an airline that I worked at, pretty legendary founder. And he always said that, we manage in the good times for the bad times. And I think that's a good way, not only as a company to operate, but it's a good way to operate as individuals, is just realize that, we're going to have times of maybe wild success and fast movement through our career trajectory, and things seem to be going great, and maybe the paychecks are coming in and growing a little bit. And then we might have some times where things aren't going quite as well. And I think if we manage in those good times, understanding that, it might not be a steep angle trajectory, from low to high, and there's probably going to be a couple spikes and dips in there. I think if we kind of keep that in mind, then that probably helps us all going forward.
Great, thanks. Well, these are great opening questions, and we have a number of questions from our students now. I'd like to get started with those. They'll be kind of more, I guess, pointed to individuals. But if once that question's answered, if someone else has something that they'd like to add, please feel free to. We have a question that was directed to Jesse, because I think you mentioned that you had done your training at Falcon Field. I think, was that more of an FBO as opposed to, say, ASU's program right now has a flight provider that's pretty regimented and involved in the, as part of the grading for professional flight. Was your training more at a fixed base operator type scenario?
And I think, if I remember correctly, it was Aaron that said that he did the same thing. I know someone did. I think it was Aaron. But in any case, yeah. I already had my pilot's license when I came to ASU. And so I was just looking for somewhere to go rent a plane to stay current. And I decided to go ahead and get my flight instructor certificate. And I did a small Part 61 place there. It wasn't very organized or regimented. Had I been able to do the pro flight program at ASU, I certainly would have opted to do a more regimented training curriculum. But it was more of a one-off thing that I did. I mean, I was a flight instructor, and I didn't follow any particular regimented syllabus at the time. And I'm looking back and wondering how I made it through all that, but it was fun nonetheless. I don't necessarily know that would be my recommendation. I think the options out there, especially for people who aspire to be professional pilots, if that's the direction you're going, I think you can be a lot more successful with less experience and less flight time when you're a product of a regimented training environment that implements things like CRM and the safety management system concepts and so forth. I think it's a really great thing that ASU's put together, and there's obviously some other schools out there that have been doing it for a while that are doing a real good job. The one-off training, I probably wouldn't recommend it if I was to do it over again.
Sure. Oh, great. Thanks. And I think, Aaron, you did go through our pro flight program, and then you actually instructed at a different company, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I finished the flight program at Arizona State, and then I instructed over at Falcon Field at Air and CAE.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. Thanks. And here's a question for Destry. Is being a female in the air transportation management career, what's it like is it easy being a female I guess that's the question. Is it easy being a female in the air transportation management career? And also, what advice would you give to a female pursuing this career?
Well, I think we all know going into this degree program, and especially into this industry, is that it is, yes, it's male dominated. I think it's something that we're working on. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there looking at diversity and looking at why women aren't coming into aviation, but it does present itself with some interesting challenges. I'm grateful to have had a lot of really great people and a lot of really good mentors in my life. But I would say my advice to that is to be confident. Like, you also have a degree in this, you also have an education in this. So what your opinion matters as well. But also don't be afraid to learn, ask questions, and make mistakes. I think a lot of times us women, and a lot of men as well, like, we always have like this imposter syndrome coming into an industry, or even just a new position, thinking, oh, we don't know this, or we can't talk about that. But definitely be confident in what you're talking about, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I think I've been met with a lot more understanding when I'm able to say, hey, I haven't heard that before, or can you educate me on this? And then I'm able to have a conversation with that person. And unfortunately, I feel like it is going to happen. You are going to run into it. So being professional is very important. Also, just, it's gonna, don't be afraid to reach out to the right people, especially within your company or whatever, whatever your path goes after college. Don't be afraid to reach out to those people, whether it be HR or a specific office, if you do need them. Also, kind of being a duck with water, just letting it roll off. I know it's one of those overplayed pieces of advice, but it's kind of, it's boring for whoever's doing it if you're not really reacting. So I would just say, like, also, and get some good people, find your tribe, whether that be within your company, whether that be outside your company. Look for other females that are either in different organizations or in the same company that you're in. I'm very grateful to be part of many different organizations, but Women in Aviation, National Business Aviation Association, AOPA, EAA, all of these places are really very welcoming. So if you are having issues or a problem with something or someone, or you're trying to get to where you're going and you find that you're getting railroaded, or you're having problems getting there, go talk to a mentor, go talk to someone in your industry and say, hey, have you been encountering the same thing as well? What have you done that you found that is effective for combating this? So kind of just to boil that all down, be professional, be confident in what you're doing, kind of let it roll off your back if you can. Definitely find your lines though. And also find that group or tribe that's going to help support you, because like the industry, we're all going to have our rough times, we're going to all have our great times. So definitely find that support group that's going to be able to support you through that and kind of help you through it if that ever happens.
Thanks, Destry. And for these next series of questions, I'd like to turn it over to our question and answer moderator, who'll kind of ask the remaining questions from the students.
Thanks so much, Mark. This is Lindsay Morris. I'm an advisor, and thank you so much for being here and talking to our students. This next question is for our pilots. This comes from a student whose major is air transportation management. They're looking to get a commercial pilot's license without changing their major. So do you have any recommendations on how they might go about that?
I'll tackle it. So if I'm getting this question correctly, they're a management student and they want their commercial license. Is that to pursue it later on, or is it, and then also what field are they training? Are they going to try to fly corporate or try to fly airlines? There's different avenues or paths that they can take. But it's most definitely doable when times are good, and I mean they will go back. The airlines were looking for pilots, qualified individuals, and the background did not really care. So for them to get that management degree and to pursue a get their commercial license, I say go for it. It just, you'll diversify and be able to if they do decide to probably get their master's in management, and then they do have the commercial and some of the fallback on as well.
Thank you. All right, our next question is open to anyone. The question is a master's degree necessary or beneficial for, this is specific to management, but honestly, it's open to any of the different aspects of the aviation field. So do you recommend going into a master's? Do you think it's necessary, beneficial?
I think I can tackle that one a little bit. Feel free to anyone add in on this, but I don't think it's absolutely essential by no means. I think there's a lot of people I know in my career who have just gotten their bachelor's. But I do have to say that if you are wanting to kind of follow a lot of the guidelines that we've been talking today is about diversifying and making sure you have that ability to kind of swim when the waves are being a little crazy, I would recommend it. I would say that even just in the years that I've been in the industry, me having my master's has helped me out considerably. Not just saying like, hey, you can have this position because you have a master's, but I feel like it also allows, especially if you're going to stick with a company a while, it allows them to invest in you, because it's not a question as whether if you're going to get the master's or not, because there are some positions that require it. I do also have to say, I had a lot of my thesis directors and professors at ASU kind of tell me this wonderful analogy. Your bachelor's tells you this is what it is, and your master's tells you we're not exactly sure what that is, and then your PhD is we don't know anything, so we want you to help us research it. So what that kind of means for you is that we're telling you in your bachelor's what we know about the industry. If you do decide to go for your master's, you're kind of getting that extra skill of, one, being able to tackle hard questions and critically think about them. So as an employer, maybe it's not specifically something that I want to employ you in, but I know that I have someone who's coming in with a hard work ethic and who can tackle these hard questions. So I would say it's beneficial. It's not absolutely necessary, especially if you're tight on funds or time. But I would say if you can, absolutely do it. And if you can't right now, definitely plan for it in the future. It's definitely a good thing to have, and it will open doors for you later on. And like everyone will tell you, once you leave school, it's a little bit harder to come back. So if you can get it knocked out immediately, I would say do it. But definitely see if you can get it, and it'll help open those doors for you later on.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Lindsay, this is Ed. If I could add just a little bit to what Destry had to say on that as well. Yes, I have to agree with a lot of what Destry said about the masters. It's one way to look at it, if you do have the time and you do have the funds, is domestically here in the US, it can be a qualifier. And as we talk about the cyclical nature and the hiring trends, you'll typically find with any job, whether it's airline or corporate or corporate management type job or anything, there's two sets of qualifications out there. There's the minimum qualification that they will publish, and that just says that you meet the ability to get a resume in our door. And then there's the competitive qualification. And you'll find that a lot of airlines might say, we absolutely at a minimum require a 4-year degree. However, I know back when I was doing some of the hiring for UPS, one of the things that we would look at is, as a separator, was those advanced degrees. Once again, it just, like Destry said, it talks about that work ethic. It talks about that commitment to that extra time to get that extra degree, to separate yourself maybe from the crowd, so to speak. And I can say the last 10 years I was with UPS working over in Asia and the Middle East. Two things that really set you apart over there that really gained a lot of respect was, one, if you had that 4th stripe so they could call you captain. The second one was either some type of an advanced degree. And I can tell you, once you start traveling international, that PhD is huge. Everybody wants to be called doctor. And when I would go to various industry meetings over in Asia, or go to the different governmental functions, everybody had a doctorate degree, and that's just the way their society measured individuals. And so I'm not saying everybody needs to run out and get a PhD. I'm just saying the more the more things that you can add to that resume to separate you from the crowd is beneficial.
Thank you. Actually, Ed, our next question will go to you. The question is, a student wanted to know what the difference was like flying passenger versus flying cargo, and which you liked better.
That's actually a very good question. So the nice thing, they both have their advantages. So I've done cargo to passenger, back to cargo, back to passenger. So from a technical standpoint, if you look at the airplanes, once you walk in the airplane and make that left turn to go up into the flight deck, 99.99% of it is identical. We fly by the same rules. The airplanes are built to the same standards. So, a 757 or a 767 at United or American, or a 737 at Southwest is identical to that 75 or 76 at UPS or FedEx. So they're the same systems. The flying itself, from a technical standpoint, is identical. The two big differences are, you don't have to worry about passengers in the back, whether you want maybe to operate the aircraft a little bit differently. And I don't mean unsafe in any way, because we all have to operate by the rules, but we typically are not quite as worried about bumps, turbulence. That's something we don't have to worry about, only our own comfort level. And you don't have to worry about primarily walking through the terminal. So for some people, you don't have an airline career unless you're wearing your uniform and walking through that terminal. For us, when I was flying cargo, typically we came in the airport from a different way. We walked straight to the airplane, and it was a lot more laid back, but still within the rules. So I would have to say, it's pretty much a balance for me. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy visiting with people. So I do love flying the passenger side of it. But I enjoyed flying the cargo side of it as well. So it's going to all fall back on what you want to do in your personality.
Perfect. Thanks so much. This next question will go to John. It's about the air traffic control route. Will these students be prepared for the ATSA test and the academy in Oklahoma City after graduation?
Couple different answers there. The intent of the program here for the air traffic control portion of it is to get you prepared for the field. The ATSA test is kind of a measurement of your aptitude to do the job. There are online tools available for you, ATC Test Prep or ATC Prep Test. It's kind of an app you can get for it probably works best on an iPad or on a PC. It's kind of a bizarre test. But I would recommend that. Prior students, former students who have gone on to the academy have used that, and they really recommend it. So the intent of the program here is to get you ready for the field, how to be a controller, not necessarily to pass the academy or to pass the ATSA, but you will be prepared to, since we teach AT Basics, which is the first 6 weeks of the academy, you will have all the information. That's part of being a CTI school. We do prepare you. You will go to the academy prepared. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And this is Carly Regan. I'm taking over for Lindsay. This next question is for our pilots. Besides a job as a CFI, what are some other good jobs to build up hours?
This is Don. I think I might jump on this one a little bit. We have 2 ASU professional pilot graduates working at Pinnacle now. They've been with us several years. One of them just upgraded to captain. They came from a cargo background. They did some flight instructing for a little while to get their hours up a little bit. And then they went to flying some cargo and single engine airplanes and feeder lines. Empire is another way to move up a little bit in the cargo world after you get some of that single engine work done. One of them, some of your upper class students might know, is Zane Stryker. He went to Alaska and did some cargo flying in Alaska. So there's quite a number of ways. Traffic reporting. Some people have done traffic reporting. Quite a number of opportunities out there other than just flight instructing.
Okay, thank you very much. Any of our other pilots, do you have any other recommendations?
Yeah, you can pipeline watching, survey work. There's a bunch, as previously mentioned, that there's other than just flight instructing to build that flight time. So yeah, just be on the lookout for opportunities that may present themselves.
Perfect, thank you. And this next question will go to Aaron. As a professional pilot, how many hours a week do you work usually?
Well, I mean, I've been at home since March. I go back to training the end of this week, but it's usually a week. They're usually 4-day trips or 2-day trips, depending on if you're reservist or not, or 3-day trips. So if you were to say, you have your whatever 4-day trip, there could be between 18 to 20 hours of flight time in that. And so, and the average day, it just depends on how many legs you have. So I can answer more so for the regional side, but yeah, you're gonna a week, maybe about 18 to 20 hours of flight time, if that.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Aaron. All right, and this question is really for any of the panelists. I know you've talked a bit about kind of expanding your horizons, but we have a student who's asking specifically if they should come up with a plan B outside of aviation totally. Is that something you'd recommend?
This is Jesse. I'll give a partial answer to this. I never intended to be outside of aviation, and I haven't been. I did get interested in other income generating and areas of interest in my life. I think one thing that's relatively cool about aviation, especially if you're a pilot, like Aaron was just mentioning, is and especially as you progress in your career and you start to work for maybe some of the bigger airlines and maybe on bigger equipment, it really does afford you a lot of time where you aren't working, where you can focus on other things. For example, I've always just been interested in real estate. And so I started investing in real estate at somewhat of a young age. And it was something that I was able to do in my spare time that wasn't a second full-time job, but I was able to build a small portfolio that I figured as I got into my later years could, create some additional income for me. I don't know that I was necessarily trying to find like a second job, but it was a hobby and something that was also a little bit of a fallback. And I think that it's always smart to look into other stuff and maybe have some secondary income streams or pursue secondary areas of interest. But I'll make it clear that I was never looking to get outside of aviation. I just think even more than having a fallback plan, I think I was just afforded a lot of time being in aviation that I was able to pursue other interests. And I think it's important to, staying vital is just keeping yourself engaged. It's quite interesting is when you get into professional aviation, this comes as a surprise maybe to some people, but I think the other pilots here on the panel will understand. You might go on a flight, a 2 or 3 or 4 day trip, and the day you get back, you won't even remember where you went. Literally, somebody can ask you, where'd you overnight? And you might have to think about it for a few minutes because you just kind of get into this routine where you do the same thing over and over again. And that's good that it's routine. That means that it's safe, it's predictable, but doing some other things, I think kind of keeps you vital. So I would strongly recommend being involved in other things when you have the time to do so. And if there's an ancillary financial benefit there, then even better.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And so this next question, so all of our aviation students are required to do an internship. It's part of their graduation. So we have a student asking, where can they look for these internships specifically in maybe aviation management?
This is Don. I'd like to try that one.
Sure.
I've been using ASU interns every semester for the last 6 years now. And one of the reasons I have enjoyed my interaction with ASU over the last half dozen years, ASU's program, I guess by necessity, focuses on airline and air traffic management and air traffic control. And we up in Scottsdale are the Southwest's largest aircraft management and charter company. And it's all private aviation, and it's an entirely different view of the aviation industry. So it's been a real joy for me to have the interns come up and see a different side of how the aviation industry functions. And even at that, the airlines being a huge part, private aviation being so diversified, anything you can do or anything an intern can do to find something in airplanes that is outside of the normal process in your academic program opens your career, gives you broader horizons, and lets you see a lot of different things going on. So that was promoting my own program, but I don't know if I even answered your question. So.
No, that was perfect. Thank you. Do any of the other panelists have a response to that?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump on that one just because it was fairly recent, like the last 5 years for me. I think looking at different places is always a good thing, and always just throw your resume in. I did my internship at the USO at Sky Harbor. NBAA, I know, has an internship. I participated in that one as well. Look at big companies that you would normally think of. So yes, like Southwest, United, those big companies that you think of when you think of aviation, but also look at kind of like what Don said, look at like Pinnacle, or look at Qatar, or look at other different types of smaller companies. And sometimes if there's not one, ask. That's how I got mine at the USO. I literally messaged the main lady and was like, hi, I'm looking for an internship. I was wondering if you had the ability to have someone come on and help you for a couple months. And she turned around and was like, yes, absolutely, let's do this. So definitely ask. Like there's no harm in asking, because if you don't, you're getting a no anyway. So definitely just kind of ask around, look around. I also say throw your resume at absolutely anything. If you meet like 70% of the qualifications, put your resume in, because you never know what is happening on the hiring end. I think it's interesting to go from applying to being on the hiring end. You kind of see the differences in what's going on, because I mean, recently at Sky Harbor, we've had some opening positions and we've had to hire people for critical positions recently. And there's sometimes where like we only get maybe 2 or 3 applicants. So throwing it in, you never know what's going to happen. So throw your resume in, throw your name in the hat if you can, but also definitely look at things that maybe you aren't on. Like maybe it's like, hey, I want to be an airline pilot, or I want to work for the airlines, and you were dead set on it. Okay, well, use your internship in a way to change it up. Yeah, apply to those big airlines and see what their internships are like, and see if you can get in the door that way. But also take a look at other ones like business aviation, or even just general aviation, working at an FBO or something like that, because that's going to help just give you a better understanding of the industry. So use it as a learning experience and use that as ability to get out of your comfort zone.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Destry. Yeah, as an advisor, we definitely give that same advice to students looking for internships, just kind of go for everything. And that's kind of a good segue into this next question. So we have a student who is asking, is there a specific airline that they should aim to fly for? They say in a previous aviation panel, one of the panelists noted that coming out of college, you should pick an airline that will progress you through your career the quickest. And so they wanted to know if you know of any airlines that would do that, or if it's just kind of go put your resume out everywhere and see what happens. What would your advice be on that?
You know, this is Ed, so I'll take this one on since I've obviously worked for 12 different airlines. So
Yeah.
the one thing that I would tell people is, in some ways, I'll just tell you up front, coming out of college, my dream was to fly for American Airlines. I went to Oklahoma State. I flew for a number of commuter and cargo airplanes in Dallas, and my dream was to fly those big silver airplanes. And I made my dream in 1992 and thought, you know, it's funny when you walk in the first day of pretty much any airline or company that you go to, you're always going to get the same speech. You know, welcome to the best airline, you know, the greatest airline in the world. You never have to worry about another job. Or welcome to the greatest aviation company in the world. You never have to worry about another job. Well, you know, for the last 8 to 10 years, that's been correct. However, I can tell you with 3 bankruptcies and a furlough, and you know, it doesn't always work that way, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. So because I got to fly for UPS, I'm now flying for Alaska, and I've loved flying for both of them. So my dream job went by the wayside, and I had to, you know, make one of those, off roads, or you know, or rethink what my dream job was. So the big thing that I'll tell people is you do want to look at what kind of flying do you want to do. Some folks want to do the corporate type flying, and it's, you know, it's more personal. You're maybe with a company, or you're with an individual group, and that's totally different. And cargo, obviously, the people that you're with is going to be the crew that you fly with. So it's a much smaller group. Passenger wise, you've obviously got the cabin crew in the back, as well as the gate agents, the airport staff. And so there's a lot of different advantages to each out there, but you do have to know what type of flying is going to make you happy. If you absolutely are not going to be happy in your career unless you're flying that 747 international, you better look for a company that flies 747 and goes international. So I can tell you, having flown both, having flown international and having flown domestic, as my career progressed, I kind of like flying up and down the West Coast. So it's going to be different, and it's going to be different phases in your life of what you're going to do. But this is going to fall back to a lot of what Jesse, Aaron, and Destry said to start this. Is, you know, you've got to be flexible, you've got to be open, and realize that what's your dream job today may not be your dream job 5 or 10 years from now, and how you handle that is probably going to be what keeps you happy in this career.
Absolutely.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. All right, so this next question, actually 2 questions, I'll combine them, are for John. So we have a student wanting to know how long would one be at the Academy in Oklahoma City for air traffic controllers, and then are air traffic controllers subject to a lot of movement, whether it is between facilities or to entirely new locations?
I'll do the time first, the academy. It all depends which route they hire you for. There are 2 ways you can go: terminal, which is basically another word for tower, or en route. The terminal route takes about 3 months, and then if you go en route, it's about 4 months. It's a little bit different approach they take. After that, and you have to get a 70% or better at the academy. If you score 70% or better, then you're offered a position. And then, as in my case, I went to LA Center. I stayed there for my entire career. You really, depending how well you score, that's, you know, let's say there's a class of 10, and all 10 of you pass. Well, there's going to be 10 positions available. The person with the highest score at the academy gets to pick first and on down the line. So it behooves you to get a better score. That way you have more of a choice. So once you get assigned a place, you got to spend a year or two there, depending if it's a tower, probably get signed off in a year. If it's an en route center, it takes 2 to 3 years to get signed off. Usually want to keep you there for a couple of years after that. But after that, once you're fully signed off, what's called a certified professional controller, you can put in for transfers if you like, or you can stay there. They don't force you to move around. It's not like the Army or Air Force. Once you're at a position, you can stay there forever, or if you want to move around, put in for a transfer.
Perfect. Thank you, John. All right. So this next question is for Destry. How has the human systems engineering part of your degree helped you in the aviation industry? And as a pro-flight student, would you recommend a student getting a minor in HSC if they had the chance to?
In one word, absolutely. I think having that knowledge of how the human body reacts to flight is something very important. And there's just some things that you just don't know about until you get into the industry or until you have experience under your belt. Like one of the most random things I talk about with one of my friends who's a flight attendant, she had a cap on her tooth that had to be replaced because of the constant expanding and contracting from the pressurization of the aircraft. Most people don't think about that when you're choosing to be a pilot for a living. So there's definitely things that do impact you and that do change with pressurization or consistent and constant pressurization. So I would say if you can get a minor, absolutely, definitely get that education because you'll kind of know what's good and what's bad, what's normal and what's not. And especially with the fact that like being a pilot really is contingent on keeping your medical. If you do know that things, how your body's supposed to react over a long period of time or how things are going to play out and having that education, it's going to probably help you keep that medical just a little bit longer, just because you know how to navigate these things. So I would say absolutely. I already have had reaped the benefits of this. Just, I remember talking to, at a conference, I was talking to a group of fighter pilots. And I was telling them, you might have to Google it because I don't want to go into a very long spiel about what it is, but I was telling them about the push-pull effect with G's, and they hadn't heard about it. And they're fighter pilots in our U.S. military. So definitely, I would say if you can get a minor, go for it. It's definitely going to only help you. I don't think it's going to hinder you at all. And another thing to look at it is that's another way to diversify your portfolio. I have talked to many human factors or human systems engineering people who are in the aviation industry who are former pilots or have gotten to the end of their career, love aviation so much that they finished off their piloting career and went on to a systems management or HVAC or something along those lines later on. So I would say definitely. I also find it completely fascinating, so I could probably nerd out and talk about it for hours. I will spare you all of that, but I would say definitely. And if you have any more questions about what that entails, and then specifically at ASU, I can definitely speak to a little bit about that.
Perfect, thank you. And so this one's open to any of the panelists. We have a student asking, what suggestions would you have for someone going into the unmanned aerial systems industry? They already have a background in flying drones and they want to see if there's anything else they can do to help them get a job in the future.
I tell you what, Carly, I'll be happy to take this one
Sure.
real quick, and I'm sure somebody, this is Ed. So a couple things. I also have my Part 107 license as well. So, but mine's more for a personal standpoint, kind of a side job doing aerial photography and real estate and that type of thing. But back as far as a career goes, you know, look at the. I tell you what, look at FedEx, look at UPS, look at Amazon. Look at any of the major delivery companies out there right now. And I can tell you, UPS was the very first US airline to get their 135 certificate for their unmanned delivery program. So, and you can look online right now, they have jobs where they're looking for instructors, they're looking for, you know, unmanned pilots, they're looking for management staff, because this is going to be a huge growth area for these delivery companies, Not and I know we talk about in the future about unmanned flight for passengers or whatever. I think that is way down the road. I mean, we're just now starting to, get comfortable with driving, unmanned or unhuman cars or autonomous driving cars. So not to look at it from a passenger standpoint, but the package delivery companies are putting huge investments behind this. And like I said, 3 of them already have their 135 certificates to allow this delivery of these. So reach out to any one of those right now and look and see either them or the companies that supply the services for them, because this is going to be a huge up and coming arena in the very near future for this package delivery companies.
Awesome. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. So this next question, I really like this one. So this is for any of our pilot panelists. We have a student asking, any suggestions on keeping a strong family life while being a pilot? Having a family is a major goal of mine, along with becoming a pilot, and I know they may be hard to balance. Any advice you might have on that for this student?
Well, from the pilots, I think I'm the youngest out of the group, so I'll probably start and let someone else finish. This is
Perfect.
I'm married. I have 3 kids, and communication is key, but also understanding. Understanding that when we leave or go away on a trip, life is still going on at home, and then when we I insert myself back into the family life, 4 days later, that life has been happening. And so also putting myself in my partner's shoes, right? So when I get home, I know I'm a bit tired or a little bit of jet lag, but understanding that she's been, home with the kids and life has still been going on for the past 4 days. So, there has to be a little bit of empathy there and understanding. And I've only been married for 6 years, so we're just starting this thing out. So I'll let the other ones take it from here, but that's been helpful for so far for me.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron.
This is Ed again. I'll jump in. So I've been married for 30 years through all these different jobs and transitions. So yes, I'll agree with what the other folks have said, Jess and Aaron, is that the big thing is, you need to have an understanding of the different roles. So yeah, as the pilot, you leave, you're gone 3 or 4 days. The other individual, the other partner is at home. They're dealing with housing issues, and it never fails. And I'm sure the other panelists will say this as well. It never fails. The minute you leave and you're at the most distant point where you can be, you get that phone call from home that something breaks, and you just feel helpless about it. So the biggest thing that you can do is there has to be like I said, an understanding from both partners going into this. There needs to be an expectation. They need to know what this career entails, and that there's going to be positives and there's going to be challenges. And so I think being honest and upfront and understanding of each other's roles in this are huge.
I'd like to add one thing, if I may. This is Jesse.
Yeah.
I think the industry is so dynamic, and there are a lot of opportunities maybe that we don't think about. A lot of us, especially if you're a professional flight major, thinking about wanting to be a pilot. But I think this panel is evidence to this. But there are different opportunities that you can investigate within aviation, even as a pilot. Whether it be a management position or to serve on some various committees, or where you can, or maybe what airplane you decide to fly, you can control that to some extent over the course of time, or you can try to make choices that might lead yourself to have a family situation that you'd be more interested in. I know a bunch of people, for example, that have gone on to be assistant chief pilots or chief pilots, and as opposed to flying the line full time, they'll spend a lot of time in the office, and that's a whole different type of challenge. But it seems like a lot of those folks have enjoyed that because they'll be able to go home each day and perhaps just drive to the office almost like a normal 9-to-5 employee. Certainly me starting a business and deciding to take on some of that responsibility, I decided to fly quite a bit less in order to do that. So it has its own unique challenges and responsibilities. But one of the benefits is certainly more control over my schedule, at least where I am on a night-to-night basis. Maybe not so much control over when my phone's going to ring, but so there are opportunities in this career field to do things that can manage your work-life balance or your how often you're home. So I just did want to make sure I made a plug for that.
Perfect. Thank you all for those responses. And John, we also have a student who's asking the same question, but as being an air traffic controller, is that as difficult to balance as being a pilot, or what does that look like?
It can be. Depending on what kind of facility you go to, some air traffic control facilities are 24-hour a day. So they have what's called a 2-2-1 schedule, where you work 2 swing shifts, 2 days, and then a mid shift within the same week. It sounds like torture, but I got used to it pretty quick. So real quickly, I'll condense it. Let's say your days off are Saturday, Sunday. Monday, you go in 3 o'clock in the afternoon, work till 11. Tuesday, you work a 1 to 9. Wednesday, what's called a quick turnaround. You'll probably work a 7 to 3. Thursday, a 6 to 2. And if you get stuck with a midnight shift, you go back in Thursday night at 11 o'clock, work till Friday, 7 in the morning. So the upside is you're off all day Friday, then you're off all day Saturday and all day Sunday. You don't go back until 3 o'clock Monday. Some people didn't like that. I really got used to it and I kind of loved it. So at least you're not working straight swing shifts or straight mids. They kind of spread the pain around there. So it is a little bit challenging depending, but again, sometimes you're home a couple extra mornings during the week, which kind of helps out in the morning, but then you're not there for for dinners together. So yeah, it does kind of take a balancing.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for that. We'll go with Destry for this one. I know you had quite a bit of experience in this. We have a student asking how they can get more involved with the ASU Aviation program. It looks like they're already involved in women aviation, but wanted to get some more experience. And they want to know how they can also get involved with recruitment outreach for ASU Aviation program.
Yeah, I think a majority of it is just essentially talking to essentially Mark. Mark does a lot of this as well. But getting involved in general with the aviation program, a good way of doing that is actually becoming a grader if you can. That gives you access to a lot of pretty amazing professors, and you can hang out with them and kind of just learn from them, and not always in an official capacity. Maybe you're grading or you're just chatting after work or something like that. That gives you a lot of ability to kind of get to know. Also, I know this is one of the things that I think students love to hear, hate to hear, but I love to say it. Go to office hours. I can't tell you how many times that I've gone to office hours and I've had an opportunity to come across my professor's desk. I've gone to look for different opportunities. Like right now, it's a little bit difficult with COVID and everything, but going out to air shows and things like that. Ask if ASU is going to be there. Usually, if it's in the Valley, they might be. So definitely take a look at that, because you can volunteer to work the booth for a little while. Or I mainly was with ASU engineering recruiting, so a lot of my stuff wasn't specifically aviation. I did engineering as a whole, so the Ira A. Fulton School of Engineering. So there was a lot of people. I got to know the engineering programs very, very well, just because of that job that I had. But there were those times where I was solely put on aviation, or was able to talk to those students who were interested in aviation. I think the biggest thing is kind of going back to what we all kind of touched on before, is go network, go talk to these professors, let your interest be known. Because if you're just saying, oh my gosh, I would love to be able to do a program like that, or I'd love to be on a student panel, or I'd love to go out to an air show, your professors and those who are putting on these events don't know that. And sometimes if the professors aren't putting it on, or they don't know, there's sometimes where people in the community might know them and say, hey, we're looking at having this happening. Can we have someone from your organization to represent? And so that kind of allows you to get involved. And when maybe it's not immediate, but when those professors get those options or those opportunities, they're able to think of you. So definitely just kind of like make it known. Go see what's on the ASU jobs website, because there's a lot to do with recruiting on there. And maybe not specifically aviation, but with ASU as a whole. So definitely take a look at those. I had to say it was one of the highlights of my career at ASU. I definitely enjoyed talking to students. It's absolutely incredible to have talked with a student one semester and then the next year see them walking around campus. So it's definitely rewarding. It's definitely a lot of fun. You get to do a lot of really fun events and get to meet a lot of really cool people. I've met Dawn multiple times at different events for ASU, different events for MBAA. So go be a student member. Women in Aviation is a great place to start. Go get, and I know MBAA just came out with it when I was working there. They have a student membership. So hop on that. I believe it's only like $20, which is absolutely nothing in the scheme of things. I know sometimes money can be tight, but that is going to help you just kind of get those connections and things like that, where a lot of the times now I'm asked to do different events kind of like this just because of those connections that I've had. So I highly recommend just getting to talk to your professors, getting to chat with them, look at ASU jobs, and just kind of making your interest known.
Perfect. Thank you, Destry. I think that that's the theme of the night is networking, networking, networking. It's so, so important in this field. Let's see here. So this next question. So this student has a goal to fly for international airlines such as Air France and is kind of asking for recommendations on how they would get there.
Carly, do we know, are they a French citizen?
I believe they are a U.S. citizen. I'm just assuming, but I think they are a U.S. citizen, but looking to work internationally.
You'll find that there are a number of organizations that actually place pilots for international contracts. One of them, I think it's called Riseback Aviation. I'm trying to think. There's if they search. I don't remember all of them right now, but they can actually search that online, and they would actually be, contract pilot placements. And what they do is they're pre-screeners for these various organizations. But I'll say that people like Lufthansa, Air France, British Airways, a lot of times you pretty much have to be a citizen for that individual country. Not all of them, but some of them, and then. Most of the contract jobs that I know a lot of my friends have taken have either been over in the Middle East or Africa or Asia. They still hire a lot of, like I said, they'll hire you for like a 5-year contract. And then if you do well, they'll renew that contract. So one of the things they'll have to look at is potentially getting some type of an international or ICAO license versus their US certificates. But there are opportunities for that. They would just have to research those individual companies.
Oh, perfect. That's great to know. Thank you for that. All right. And then our next question here, this student is wondering if this is the best career field to pursue if the end goal is becoming an astronaut.
This is Vicki from the Career Center. It's a lovely field. However, if you go to NASA's website and look at what the majors have been of the most recent crews, you'll see that quite oftentimes that they are scientists, engineers, botanists, and the like. So it would help. But every few years as they do change what the emphasis is for an astronaut.
Thanks, Vicki. Yes, and there is the Aerospace Engineering program within the Schools of Engineering on the Tempe campus, I think would be kind of more along those lines.
And I'd like to add to that, and I know a lot of stuff recently, like NASA's been opening it up to the public to put into it, to put into applications. Of course, if astronaut is your #1 goal, a great place to look is the U.S. military, whether that be the Air Force and Navy, some type of aviation. Are they always chosen from the military? Absolutely not. But that is one of the most common places we see it. So definitely, if that's what you're looking for, that is another place to look. So definitely take a look at those and kind of take a look. I would say go onto NASA's website, kind of like Vicki said, and go take a look at what degree programs and what types of backgrounds those astronauts have. You don't need to completely repeat their background. You don't need to be a carbon copy of whoever they are. But they definitely just take a look, and it can kind of tell you what you need to shoot for and what you're interested. But keep in mind, those crews aren't always pilots. They're a mix because you're going to be doing science, whether it's on the trip to Mars or on the International Space Station. So definitely take a look at those and ask yourself, what would my job be on the space station if I got up there? Because if you're a pilot, that's fantastic. You can get from point A to point B, but let's have another thing to fall back on when they want you to be performing science. So definitely take a look at those. And the only reason I speak to it is I've had the opportunity to kind of chat with some astronauts as well, and they're fantastic people. So definitely look at different conferences because they do happen to show up there every once in a while, and you can corner one every now and again and get a lot of those questions answered.
Great, thank you. And so this next question, we'll just have one of our pilots answer it, whoever would like to take this. With worldwide pandemics like COVID and many other factors, would you recommend aiming to fly for companies such as UPS and FedEx that tend to fly through these emergencies as opposed to some major airlines, such as United and American?
Okay, I guess since we're talking cargo, this is it. I can try to answer that one for you. So,
Thanks, Ed.
Sure. So here's the thing. Yes, for this individual or for this particular crisis, obviously your cargo companies are really benefiting greatly. The passenger carriers not so much. So, but realize that each of the different types of flying runs in a cycle based on what's going on or what may not be going on. So there were just a year ago or so the cargo companies were kind of flat, and that was because of geopolitical issues. When we start to have talks between different countries as far as trade and different things going on, it can have a short-term impact on the cargo companies. So not that they furlough, because they are typically their peaks and valleys are typically less drastic as the passenger carriers, but there's still going to be that time where maybe they're not hiring, and so it's very flat, and while you still have a job, you get stuck at the bottom. So the big thing there is, like I said earlier, that from an actual pilot duty flying, both flying passenger and flying cargo is pretty much the same. So you just kind of have to figure out which is more to your liking. Do you mind flying the cargo where there's nobody in the back, and you're kind of with your crew and you take care of yourself and you're going to fly from a different side of the airport, or do you look at that that you enjoy flying with the passengers and having the full crew and maybe interacting with the passengers and the airport staff? So I hope that answers the question. That yes, cargo has traditionally been a little more stable, but they both have their peaks and valleys.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ed.
And this is Aaron, and to piggyback off of what Ed said, just like he said, there's different issues that will cause different rises and peaks and valleys with this different type of flying, but also with autonomous aircraft approaching. It's coming. The cargo industry will probably be the first to see that happen. So it's the aviation industry is always evolving, ever changing. So that's something to think about as well.
Great, thanks, Aaron. We've reached the end of time for this first panel. I'd like on behalf of the aviation program and the Fulton Schools of Engineering, I'd like to thank the panelists for their time and insight. And I'm clapping for all of our students virtually. Panelists, you're welcome to mute yourselves and then listen to the next panel. We have our next panel is going to be two of our student organizations to talk about their organizations and how to join. And you can listen or you can leave the meeting. And if it prompts you to do so, you can make me the host. Students, we're not going to break this time. We're going to go right to the panel. So I wanted to kind of pull up Brittany Jennings, who's our president of our Women in Aviation organization. And I'm going to turn it over to Brittany to talk a little bit about the WIA.
Hi guys, my name is Brittany Jennings, like Professor Brino said. I'm the current president of Women in Aviation. This is my third year here at ASU. My major is professional flight. I'm currently working on my commercial multi-rating. So Women in Aviation is basically an organization that brings women and men together in the aviation community here at ASU to develop, I'm just reading off the screen, I'm sure you can read it too, to develop professional and network within the community. So it's basically a way to bring the aviation students here at ASU together in order to make the aviation process go a lot easier. I know, like many of the panelists have talked about before, aviation is about who you know and who you talk to. So by joining organizations like Women in Aviation, you get to interact with people who have similar goals as you and people who have gone through programs that you are currently going through. So I know that personally being in the pro flight track, it gets difficult at times and you're gonna wanna rely on people who have gone through the program. So through Women in Aviation, I've actually met a lot of people that have made the program a lot easier for us. So what does Women in Aviation do? So we have bi-weekly meetings every other Tuesday at 6:30. So actually we have a meeting right after this if anyone's interested in joining. I'll send the Zoom link in the chat if I can figure it out. So basically we do events. We meet bi-weekly, like I said before. Recently, we just did some plane watching at Sky Harbor where we just got sandwiches, mingled, watched planes take off and land. I know in a couple of weeks from now, we're doing a movie night at the SDFC. We're all gonna get together and watch Top Gun. And then later in November, I think it's November 20th, we're going to go to the Intel hangar here at Mesa Gateway. They're willing to give us a tour, which is pretty cool. To learn some more information about Women in Aviation, to just kind of check it out to see what we're all about, you can email us. Our email is up there on the screen, but also our Instagram is at SunDevilWAI. If that just kind of has a brief overview of what we do as a club. And yeah.
So students, if you have questions for Brittany and Women in Aviation, and please go ahead and chat them out. All right, well, we'll let them think about that. Thanks, Brittany. So, obviously, Women in Aviation is one of our, largest, and again, it's not just for women, guys. So please consider joining. And thanks, Brittany. Next is Trevor Monroe. He's our president of our ASU's Alpha Eta Rho chapter. And I'm going to turn it over to Trevor to tell us a little about AHP.
Hey, guys. Can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yep. Yeah, so I'm Trevor, like Professor Brian said. I'm just kind of speaking back to Women in Aviation. I'm in Women in Aviation, and I'm a guy, so it's not just for women, it's for anyone who basically has an interest in aviation. So it's a great organization. And another great one that I'm the president of is Alpha Eta Rho. Here on the Polytechnic campus, we're the Alpha Sigma chapter. A little bit of background history. So we were founded in 1929 in California. And then kind of since then, it's just kind of molded and kind of turned into kind of what we have now. But it's the oldest professional aviation fraternities that you probably ever hear of. We have a lot of events we try to do with our members. Right now with COVID, we're still trying to figure out kind of what we can do with ASU guidelines. But so for instance, last year we went to Vegas. That's our picture when we were at the Vegas conference. So we're trying to do we want to do more stuff like that with conferences. We also go to events such as like Sky Kids. It's like a cool volunteer event we go to where you can actually, get into airplanes and kind of help, kids out in that nature. And then, so primarily the way we operate, we're a fraternity, so we have members and we kind of do stuff within our members. With kind of COVID stuff going on, I think possibly starting at the end of this semester or the beginning of spring, we're going to try to open that up to more kind of public view, and maybe we'll also try to host a rush in the spring as well. But that's something we're still trying to work out internally. As far as contact stuff go, if you want to kind of learn more about Alpha Eta Rho, we have our website up there. It's alphaetarho.org. Our Instagram is AHP Alpha Sigma. And then I'm pretty sure on Sync will be able to be chatted on there as well on the Sun Devil Sync, and then also through Instagram Instant Message, which is a good way to get us to. But as far as one of the big things you would get with joining Alpha Eta Rho and really being a part of it is we have tons of alumni that are either currently in the profession or maybe they tried it out and it wasn't for them. So you can kind of see both sides of, okay, is this something like I really want to do, because it's a lifestyle. And then if you do, being able to catch our alumni and learn from them and talk with them and kind of see how they got through it. Kind of like what Brittany said earlier, as far as you want to be able to speak with people that kind of already went through the program, because if you're kind of doing on your own, it's a hard program to get through. So by joining clubs and stuff like Women in Aviation, being a part of Alpha Eta Rho, and really kind of networking, that's, at least for me, I think that's what's been able to start to get me through.
Yeah.
We have scholarships. I think the last couple were from Piedmont. We had a few from Mesa, Envoy, Air Cargo, PSA. So a lot of airlines have Alpha Eta Rho members kind of mixed into their management and into their pilot group. So it's pretty cool where, if you kind of throw your resume out, someone in Alpha Eta Rho, which was an alumni, probably, may see your resume, and that might, help you out in the long run as far as looking for jobs.
Yeah, one of the things that the career panel, emphasized was, and it just all the way across the board was, connections and networking. So, again, what experiences have you had, both of you, Brittany and Trevor, in terms of networking opportunities and connections that you've made with people in the industry?
I can answer that first. So every year, Women in Aviation has a national conference. Last year it was in Orlando, Florida. This year it's going to be in Reno, Nevada. As of right now, it hasn't gotten canceled. But basically at that conference, every single airline, every single business related to the airlines comes to this conference. And since we get to go, last year ASU actually funded our entire trip. We just get to walk around, talk to all the airlines, all the businesses, and get to ask some questions about what they expect, who they look for when they're hiring. I even brought copies of my resume, handed them to them, asked if they have internships. I would follow up and email them later, saying thank you for talking to me about this. I look forward to applying to whatever, an internship, a scholarship, something like that. So being able to go to these conferences has been super beneficial. I know a few other members have gotten internships through just talking with these people at these conferences, and they can be very beneficial.
Great. Trevor?
Yeah, so I mean, Brittany kind of hit on the nose there. It's this industry that we're in, as far as aviation in general. I don't think I know a single pilot that if you walked up to them and be like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, how can I get to where you are? I can almost guarantee you that pilot's gonna either give you their personal number and kind of help you out on their own, or they might even refer you to someone who will be able to help you out. Going to these national conferences with Alpha Eta Rho, being a part of the MBAA conference that we were able to go to, just talking with all these people that are work for Honeywell, work for Southwest, work for United, all these companies, all the people that are in this industry, they're really just, there to help you. And, they went through the same struggle as far as trying to network and all that. So they get it. If you walk up to them and it's awkward, they totally understand. So I think one of the biggest things is just, try to get out there and, just talk to them, because, you know, chances are they're going to know exactly what you're trying to do. And if they don't, they're going to be able to refer you to someone. Even our, professors here at ASU, a lot of them, I think pretty much all my aviation professors are tied to the industry in one way or another. And, if you have any questions, I'm sure they, have a great idea on, hey, like, I don't know this question, but I know who does. And that's really kind of how this industry works.
And then Trevor, this is Carly, and we have a question from a student. I know you mentioned it briefly, but is Alpha Eta Rho planning to rush in the spring, and how would a student go about doing that?
Yeah, so I think for right now, if you guys are interested, I would try to follow us on the Instagram, which is AHP Alpha Sigma. And then if we do start doing that, maybe we'll try to get advising or something to send out an email to the aviation focused students. But as far as possibly doing a rush in the spring, that's something we're still trying to work out, as far as making sure it's going to work out with ASU guidelines, and as far as COVID and all that. So it's not a for sure thing, but it is a possibility. And if it doesn't work out where you're able to rush in this spring, you can always try to find us in the fall. But I definitely think for the spring, we'll try to start kind of putting stuff out there, whether it's flyers or stuff around campus. Hopefully you guys will be able to see and find us that way. But definitely a good step right now would be to follow our AHP Alpha Sigma Instagram.
Great. And Brittany, I think you mentioned that there's a meeting coming up right after this, but can students join Women in Aviation? Do they have to join at a specific time during the semester, or can they join at any time?
Yeah, so that's the great thing about Women in Aviation in our club, is you can join it any time of the year, any time of your college career. I highly recommend joining when you're a freshman, though, because that's when you'll build the most connections. I know personally, when I started here at ASU, it was hard to find a good group of friends. It was kind of uncomfortable to put myself out there and reach out to people. But I joined organizations like Women in Aviation. I'm also a part of Alpha Eta Rho. I reached out, I joined these organizations as a freshman, and that's where I met some of my best friends that are still my best friends today. Like I said before, our meeting is right after this. So if some reason you can't come to that one, feel free to come to our next one. Just follow our Instagram, stay updated. But yes, you can join Women in Aviation at any point throughout the semester.
Great. There are a couple other organizations that we have. We have a fairly new OBAP organization of Black Aviation Professionals. And then we also have a Drone Devils Club for our unmanned aerial students. We have an Alpha Ace Club as well. So, keep one of the things we try to keep you all informed with bulletin boards in the sim building itself, but also our advising office is great about blasting out different information for student organizations. I really think that student organizations, again, as both Trevor and Brittany mentioned, are a great way to connect with new friends and with similar passions. But it's great from a resume standpoint. The more organizations you belong to, the more you aspire to be leaders in those organizations, can help be a deal maker when it comes time to getting either jobs on the campus while you're a student or even scholarships. So please, consider joining one of these organizations if you can. And I think we're getting to the end of our program here. So on behalf of ASU's aviation program and Fulton Schools of Engineering, I'd like to thank the student organizations for their time and insight. ASU 101 students, be sure to take Career Exploration Night Survey, which is on page 3 of your workbook. The recording that we've done tonight will be available in a couple of days through your ASU 101 course. And everyone, please go ahead and log out of the webinar now. And I wish you a great night, and stay warm, because we finally gotten to the point in Arizona where we're getting into our fall, our fall weather. So again, I'd like to thank all of our panel members tonight for a great aviation panel and career night. I'd like to thank Vicki Fox and her team from the Fulton Schools of Engineering Career Center. They do a great job. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do this, in our upcoming years back in person again. So thank you again for everything.